Well, good morning,
Hello,
good
everyone.
afternoon. Sorry, which one of us is going to go first? I'll go first. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Rebel Roundup. Our stream obviously has a case of the Mondays. We both have forgotten what we're doing around here. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn-Reid. I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Tamara Ugolini, wherein we talk about the news of the day, as you can tell, completely unscripted. Tamara, how's it going?
Pretty good, thanks, Sheila. Now that we're getting our Monday jitters off of the table on the onset, what about you?
You know, it's okay to shake your sillies out on a Monday. It's not okay to do it live on air in front of thousands of people. But yeah, I mean, we're still in the throes of winter here. I know that you went to cover, or you were going to cover, a Tesla protest. Um, Here in Edmonton, they didn't show up because in some places we got like 45 centimeters of snow, and electric cars and protesters apparently don't work in the snow. How was it for you guys?
Yeah, so we had to kibosh the plan to go to Belleville. It was the International Tesla Takedown Day on Saturday, where people were being called upon to sell off their stocks, ditch their Tesla vehicles, and denounce Elon Musk as a destroyer of democracy, I guess, here in Canada. So we unfortunately didn't make it to Belleville because of the road conditions. And that 2-lane stretch of highway, kind of on the 401 from Cobourg to Belleville, it goes down to 2 lanes, and it is notorious for horrible transport truck drivers. And
Yeah.
so both camerawoman Avery and I didn't want to risk it. So we headed out instead to the local Tesla charging station, where they have, I think there was about 7, they have 6 or 7 Tesla chargers lined up. And then there's 3 or 4 of just sort of your generic electric vehicle chargers just adjacent to it. So it's usually a happening spot depending on the day. And Saturday happened to be one where there was a lot of cars coming and going from the Tesla specific one chargers. So I'm really looking forward to that full report. And I know that David Menzies and super producer Ephraim went out to Kitchener also, where they had looked like a decently radical turnout of extremists on the left who used to love Elon Musk. That's the
Yeah.
thing that I find so funny and hypocritical about all of this is he was like the poster boy of
Yeah.
radical green energy initiatives. And now all of a sudden, because he wants to cut your tax dollars in the United States, we're mad at him here in Canada, defacing Tesla dealerships, vandalizing them. One thing that I'm really looking forward to once it gets compiled together, because my audio file is separate from the video. And so that has to become a cohesive unit once again. But there was one guy in particular, and you know what, maybe I'll save it for our actual
Save it.
Tesla chat. Yeah, because I wanted to point out something really interesting that we learned getting out there and talking to the people, things that you don't otherwise realize or get to hear about unless you are out there in the streets talking to just your average Joe Schmo from wherever and getting his feedback and thoughts on world events.
Yeah, the majority of news is where the people are, and that's why you're hosting with me today, because David Menzies is out in the wild. Because I think he's one of the best Shula of their journalists in this entire country. We should tell everybody what we're doing and how they can get
Yes.
involved. If you are watching us on Rumble, thank you for sticking out there on Rumble. It's a great free speech platform that stood by Rebel News really when nobody else would. Um, you can support the work that we do here at Rebel News through a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're obligating ourselves to read it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our best to get to it, time permitted. And we appreciate every little bit that you choose to give to us, because I realize that times are tougher than ever in Justin Trudeau's Canada. And we really do appreciate that you're choosing to spend what few dollars you have left on us. Now, we are recently remonetized on YouTube. God only knows how long that's going to last. But we know that, like 1.7 million of you prefer to watch us there. And we're grateful for you. We would never abandon you. If you want to support us over there, you can leave us a super chat once again. So if you want to do that, do it while we're still allowed. And if you want to leave a paid comment after the fact on the recorded version of the live stream, you can leave, I think it's called a super thanks, is their paid comments there. So that's it. We can talk about the news now. Late Friday, Paul Chiang.
You launched this campaign, Sheila. So I think you're the person to head right into this one.
Yes. So I'm sure everybody knows, although if you get your news from the CBC, you probably have no clue what I'm talking about. But Paul Chiang, Liberal MP, a candidate MP, he back in January told ethnic media. Now, first it was allegedly, and then he admitted he did it and apologized to everybody, but he didn't actually bother to apologize to the person he did it to. So he told ethnic media back in January, hey, did you know there's a $1 million bounty from the Chinese, which is true, on Joe Tay, who is my conservative competition. So go get him, take him to the consulate, and collect your money. What's a little transnational repression and kidnapping amongst friends? Now, I thought instantly to put the fire out, because this is like getting out of hand now. I thought, oh, they're going to turf him instantly. But I thought, just to be safe, let's give the people a voice. I started a campaign called firechang.com, because we know 4 Canadians were just executed by China. And we also know that during the Foreign Interference Commission, CSIS just mentioned offhand that 2 or 3 Canadians were what they call forcibly repatriated, whatever that means, read kidnapping there, or at least strong-armed through intimidation to go back to China off the streets of Canada. So this is a real thing. We also know out of that consulate in Toronto, that's the very one that they said to take Joe Tay to. That's the consulate that was intimidating Michael Chong. So Anyway, as it turns out, 2 days later, after Mark Carney bans journalists from asking questions over the weekend, he couldn't do it anymore, and they asked him about, what are you gonna do about Paul Chiang? And Paul Chiang finally Monday morning gets around to apologizing to Joe Tay. Joe Tay says, "You can take your apology and stick it. I don't accept it." Because to turn Joe Tay over to the consulate does mean certain death, quite likely. So he was like, "No, I don't accept your apology." But you know who did accept his apology? Apparently, Mark Carney, Beijing's banker. So, do we have a clip of that?
Yeah, we have a few of them. Let's
It's
play
not
the
just
first one.
opposition parties
Yeah.
calling for Mr. Chang's resignation, it's also at least 13 civil society groups. What message are you sending to Canadians who are worried about pressure from China when you allow him to stay on? And how can you credibly criticize Pierre Poilievre for his lack of security clearance when Mr. Chang is considered a worthy candidate?
Well, the first thing, I can very credibly
Great questions.
criticize the leader of the opposition for being at 930 days running and not having a security clearance. I will say as well, in the course of my responsibilities, current responsibility, I didn't do that. That wasn't me. I did manage to cut the piece of wood second time running. Although I was under expert supervision.
Shut up and answer the question.
No, getting back to these are serious matters. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, shut up.
But in the course of my responsibility as Prime Minister, just yesterday, I received an additional briefing on foreign interference and potential matters related to that. Of course, I can't share any details of that.
And that's why he didn't get the clearance.
Once again, I take my responsibility seriously, but the extent to which leader of the opposition does not and hasn't for more than 3 years. In terms of, but to go back to the specifics of your question, this situation. So I deeply offended by those comments. As I said, they're a terrible lapse of judgment. I view this as a teachable moment. It underscores the respect with which we treat human rights in this country, the differences between Canadian society and other countries. This, after all, though, I will go back to the character of the individual who made a lapse judgment. This is someone who has served our community, has been on the front line of policing for almost 3 decades, and has been standing up for those rights and has that track record for it. He's made his apology. He made it to the public. He made it to the individual concerned, made it directly to me, and he's going to continue with his candidacy. Thank you.
I notice multiple GTA area candidates behind you. If you're still standing behind Mr. Chiang, why isn't he standing behind you today?
He has other responsibilities in his riding. We don't have every. We have multiple, but not every candidate.
That's what you get when the mainstream media actually does part of their job, some actual tough questions. And that the former police officer tidbit makes Chang's comments all the more disturbing. Yeah.
Right. It makes it worse because this guy knows better. It makes me actually wonder about his 30 years in policing and what went on during those 30 years of policing. What did he do otherwise that was improper? Now I'm suspicious. But you'll also note that Carney takes this opportunity to bring up Pierre Poilievre not getting his NC-COP NDA signed. Poilievre can talk about foreign interference because he didn't get that. And so the rest of these guys hide behind that gag order. And so he's, I got a high-level briefing, but I can't talk about it. And so we're just not going to talk about it. Well, that's why Poilievre didn't get it right there. It makes me wonder also what Chandra Arya, what he did, what Ruby Dalla did, as if, right? But what did they do? Right? Because they were booted. And they would have us believe, I guess what we're supposed to believe is that Ruby and the other fellow did something worse than encouraging a kidnapping for bounty payout? Is that what you want us to believe? Because you booted them, but you kept this guy. And I also like the reliance on the Trudeau teachable moment line. Remember when Trudeau wore blackface and it was a teachable moment for all of us about our racism? And I'm like, well, I didn't do that. Or he goes around groping female reporters, and it's a time for us all to reflect on our misogyny. And again, this is a teachable moment to all of us when it was the Carney Liberals
I'm surprised.
encouraging a state-sanctioned kidnapping.
Right. And I'm surprised he didn't go so far as to say, oh, well, they experienced it differently. That was a classic one-liner from Trudeau when all those people
Yeah,
kind of stood up and said, wait a minute, what you're doing is unethical and wrong. And oh, well, they must have experienced it differently, like textbook gaslighting. But I wanted to point to before we get to the next clip of Carney, because it's kind of more of the same. But Joe Tay put out a full statement on
yep,
social
he
media
did.
today. And, you know, where you already mentioned, Sheila, that he said that he would not be accepting the apology, of course. But he calls on Carney to fire Paul Chiang as Liberal candidate for Markham Unionville. And instead said that his threatening public comments were intended to intimidate me and they must not be tolerated. And then he made an unsolicited attempt to contact Joe Tay to discuss the matter, and then posted on social media that he offered him this apology. I want to be clear, no apology is sufficient. Threats like these are the tradecraft of the Chinese Communist Party to
Yeah,
interfere in Canada. And they are not just aimed at me, they're intended to send a chilling signal to the entire community in order to force compliance to Beijing's political goals. And of course, he goes on to say that he fears for his safety and he calls them insidious comments. He's glad they came to light. And that's that. And then you have Mark Carney going up and saying he apologized. So we're going to just pretend like this is all to the wayside now and move on with this candidate still running as part of the Liberal Party.
right. And
Gosh.
this is the same. He said, turn them over to the same consulate that was running an intimidation campaign against Michael Chiang.
Mm-hmm.
These Liberals have learned nothing, or actually, maybe they've learned that they can get away with it because the Liberals prorogued Parliament. So any of the recommendations that were offered up by the Foreign Interference Commission, none of those were implemented before this election or before their leadership election, which they, according to them, was already impacted by foreign interference twice. And that's their admission. And there are 11 parliamentarians. We don't know who they are. And they said, we're not going to know who they are. Well, I can tell you who one is. Paul Chiang.
Paul Chiang.
Yeah, Paul Chiang. Han Dong was another for sure. But Mark Carney, Beijing's banker, standing by his man. We've got one more clip from Mark Carney on this, and I'll tell you why nobody should expect Mark Carney to do anything about this anyway.
Mr. Carney, I'd like to press you a little bit more on Paul Chiang. He lives in a riding that is 70% diverse, people of color. Half of that are people of Chinese ethnic origin, and of that population, about 20% are from mainland China. The question that people from Hong Kong have asked me to ask is whether or not you are putting appeal to those voters who may support the policies of China ahead of the democratic rights and safety of dissidents who have called Canada home, and mainly Hong Kong democracy activists who now live in Mr. Chiang's riding.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Stand foursquare for rights, foursquare for our position, our very strong position vis-a-vis China, respect for Canadian citizens, all rights of Canadian citizens, irrespective of whether they hold dual citizenship or not, to be absolutely clear. And Mr. Chiang has long history of service to that community, history of protecting those rights. Mr. Chiang is well aware of these issues, including having family in Hong Kong.
How can he be an effective representative for them when they no longer trust him after he said this? The question, as you know, Mr. Carney, you know that Canada has executed 4 Canadians this year.
China.
You know that there are human rights activists in China in detention right now. How can Mr. Chiang, how can your party keep him as a candidate knowing this context?
Mr. Chiang has apologized for his comments. It's a lapse of
Oh, okay.
judgment. He apologized
No
for
lapse of
he's
judgment.
apologized for his comments. He's apologized directly to me. He's apologized directly to the individual. He has a long record of service. He's going to continue his candidacy.
Unreal. It's nice to see the media pushing back on him, but Mark Carney, I didn't expect him to do anything with this candidate. I hope this festers like a wound in the middle of his campaign, as it should, given we spent weeks and weeks and weeks on the Foreign Interference Commission, millions of dollars. But Mark Carney, just weeks after he became the head of the economic task force of the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, and not as the prime minister, right? Like, that's how Mark Carney got around his ethics disclosures was, oh, I work for the party. I'm advising the leader of the Liberal Party and not the prime minister, who happens to be the exact same dude. And just weeks after that, he went to China and he got a $250 million state-backed loan. So linked to the CCP, loan to Brookfield Asset Management. And so that's why we don't expect him to say anything about this and not to turf that candidate. His company, Brookfield, is indebted to the tune of $250 million to a state-run bank. He's Beijing's banker, and that's all it is. And he, as long as he is benefiting financially from a friendly relationship with China and the communist authoritarians there, then Canadian democracy be damned. And I think Polyev has a statement on this today, unless you had something you wanted to add.
Well, I do want to just say also that Beijing, being Beijing's banker, Mark Carney, this isn't a new phenomenon. This goes back to his time as the governor for the Bank of England. There is journalist Sam Cooper, who has been investigating this very deeply and very heavily, especially the last several months, where he ties all of this and he gets into the spider web of connections that Carney has with the CCP and the bank cartels. And he basically says that there was all these swap deals that were happening. And so this 250 million, I think that pales in comparison to the true scope of the financial interests and dollars at play here and the entanglement and intertwining of it all. We do have the clip from Polyev, but just while we're on the topic of Sam Cooper, he had that great post that we were just showing on screen there, his publication called The Bureau. And this is supporting CCP repression. We have Joe Tay saying that this is the most challenging time in our lifetimes, and we must protect this place we call home, right? We must protect our due process, our democracy, and deal with this foreign interference. But we can't because, as you mentioned, Sheila, the Foreign Interference Commission came up with a full report, had all these tabulated recommendations, and they're all going to fall to the wayside because the Liberals couldn't figure their ish out before we head into this tariff war now with the President of the United States. So this is just a complete mess, and in my opinion, could have been entirely avoided. But of course, the Liberals want to save their own face and pad and line their own self-interest rather than actually doing what is in the best interest of all Canadians.
Well, and I think it was absolutely purposeful that they prorogued Parliament before those recommendations could be implemented, because we know it was the Liberals who were the benefactors or the beneficiaries of their benefactor, China, in foreign interference in ridings in the Lower Mainland and across, I guess, the GTA. And so, of course, the Liberals weren't going to implement those recommendations before the next election, because it would cost them ridings that were completely winnable for the Conservatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's show this clip here of Pierre Polyev calling out Carney for standing by Paul Chiang.
Yes, he must be disqualified. I find it incredible that Mark Carney would allow someone to run for his party that called for a Canadian citizen to be handed over to a foreign government on a bounty, a foreign government that would almost certainly execute that Canadian citizen. Think about that for a second. We have a Liberal MP saying that a Canadian citizen should be handed over to a foreign dictatorship to get a bounty so that that citizen could be murdered. And Mark Carney says he should stay on as a candidate. What does that say about whether Mark Carney would protect Canadians? Mark Carney is deeply conflicted. Just in November, he went to Beijing and secured a $250 million loan for his company from a state-owned Chinese bank. He's deeply compromised, and he will never stand up for Canada against any foreign regime. Is another reason why Mr. Carney must show us all his assets, all the money he owes, all the money that his companies owe to foreign hostile regimes. And this story might not be entirely the story of the bounty and a Liberal MP calling for a Canadian to be handed over for execution to a foreign government might not be something that the everyday Canadian can relate to because it's so outrageous. But I ask you this, if Mark Carney would allow his Liberal MP to make a comment like this, when would he ever protect Canada or Canadians against foreign hostility? He has never put Canada first, and that's why we cannot have a fourth Liberal term. After the lost Liberal decade, our country is a playground for foreign interference. Our economy is weaker than ever before, our people more divided. We need a change to put Canada first with a new government that will stand up for the security and economy of our citizens and take back control of our destiny. Let's bring it home.
Yeah, I would say that's a much different and more powerful remarks from Pierre Poilievre than you're getting from Carney, who, you know, again, I always keep coming back to the fact that Carney has never campaigned before. This is
Yeah,
all
and
new
it
territory
shows.
for him. Yeah, and he lacks decorum. He obviously becomes quite flustered and aggressive if there's questions that he doesn't like. He seemed to hold his composure at the presser this morning, but I mean, we'll see more of how that looks as he continues on the campaign trail, and the fact that they're obviously keeping Paul Chiang in here and saying, "Well, he apologized, so it's okay. Let's move on." He regrets his words. Like that is not even close to going far enough on the severity of what he called for here. It's just completely unacceptable. I don't know in what kind of sane world the Liberals and Mark Carney couldn't see that.
Yeah, I'm not one to use the word treason, but this feels certainly treasonous when you're going to turn over a Canadian freedom activist against the transnational abuses of China over to the Chinese consulate, which intimidated your political opponents in the past. It's revolting. This is the kind of thing that you would, if you did this in the United States, you'd have the CIA and the FBI at your door. In
Mhm.
Canada, it's Carney says he apologized, so all is forgiven. That's like saying you shot at somebody, but you missed. And so it's definitely not attempted murder because you said sorry. Like, that's not how it works. And we actually, the site task force, which is like it's the alphabet group of agencies. So CSIS, RCMP, and a couple of others, and elections officials, they all have this task force where they get together and try to keep elections safe. I don't know. Ask me how effective I think it was during the last two elections. But anyway, given what happened on Friday with the news breaking of Paul Chiang doing this sort of kidnapping for ransom to the Chinese communist murderers, they had a press conference this morning, basically, I guess, in response to Paul or Mark Carney's complete inaction on this, saying that candidates who feel threatened, like Joe Tay definitely does, can get private security to keep them safe. And anyways, I'll just be quiet. We'll show the clip, and then I'm sure we'll both have lots of remarks.
Over the past week, the panel of the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol has met and been briefed by the Security and Intelligence Threats to Election Task Force, also known as SITE. The panel has not found any incidents that have impacted Canada's ability to have a free and fair election. One concerning trend is the intensification and rise in threats of violence and intimidation directed at Canadian public figures. That is why the Government of Canada has introduced the Candidate Security Program. This program provides an additional layer of security through unarmed private sector security services to candidates who feel intimidated or threatened. It is in Canada's vital national interest that Canadians running for elected office feel safe. This new program will complement other measures to keep candidates safe, such as the SITE task force briefings to security-cleared representatives of political parties represented in the House of Commons, one of which occurred last week, and the CSE hotline for candidates. As part of its mandate, another area the SITE task force continues to monitor is transnational repression. In the report on the public inquiry into foreign interference, the Honourable Justice Hogue issued a call to action on transnational repression. She noted her concern over what she had heard during the inquiry and observed that transnational repression seems to be on the rise as the world continues to change rapidly. Their goal is to advance foreign interests and silence criticism and dissent. The strength of Canadian society is for all of its citizens to be able to freely and safely participate in our democratic processes. Internationally, Canada is working with our partners and allies to address this pressing global threat. As part of Canada's 2025 presidency, G7 members will come together to discuss a coordinated response to countering transnational repression. Here at home, we are taking a whole-of-society approach. Canada's security and intelligence organizations are at the front line of efforts to detect and counter this threat.
I don't know about you, but this seems like a lot of fancy words for deal with the foreign interference problem in Canada. And maybe we won't have to have all these extras. I mean, is it any wonder that nobody wants to run or is nervous these days to run as a political candidate if this is what you have to expect is intimidation tactics from foreign governments? And I don't know how much unarmed private security is really going to be able to quell of that because, well, when you're dealing with hostile foreign governments,
they'll poison you. Like they won't even shoot you. They'll poison you. They'll kidnap you. They'll kidnap your family in China. And that's how you'll be forced to return to China. So I don't know. I mean, but this is elections officials trying to react to the fact that Mark Carney fails to act on this kind of stuff. So they're just like, well, what do we do? I guess we got to do something because Mark Carney isn't turfing the candidate that said, yeah, you should kidnap him and turn him over to the Chinese killers for $1 million so I can win my election. There's nothing these liberals won't do to win. That's what I've noticed. And it's never the liberals who are the targets of Chinese repression. It is always the conservatives, or in the instance of Jenny Kwan, who is an NDP MP in the Lower Mainland, she was the target out of the consulate in Vancouver there because she's outspoken against the abuses of the Chinese regime. And I noticed in the press conference that Jenny Kwan held about Paul Chiang's craziness that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh couldn't say a word. Why? Because he took that high-level security briefing. So he can't say anything. He just had to stand there like a stump, which is probably better than listening to him talk, to be honest.
Yeah, they get to hide behind that veil of, well, I have my security clearance, so we can't talk about it. And we're going to criticize Pierre Poilievre for not having it because he wants to continue to talk about it. It is upside down, bizarro world that we're living in. I just want to read this super chat while we're on the topic, and then we'll move on to some of the other things we're going to chat about here. From Nana Awake gives $10. Thank you very much for that. Hi, ladies. This apology is unacceptable. His comment risked an MP's life. It's an actual hate crime and possible act of collusion. I guess hate only applies to parents who don't want some genders in other genders' washrooms. We have to be careful of the way
YouTube.
that we word things here on YouTube, but you can see the full unrestricted comment
Read it
there
for
on the
yourself.
screen. Yeah, please read for yourself.
Yeah.
Which is another, anyway, I won't go off on that tangerine, but yeah, it's an apology that apparently, if you read I'm just trying to pull it up here again. If you read the statement from Joe Tay, there wasn't even a direct apology. He says he made an unsolicited attempt to contact me to discuss this matter and then posted on social media that he offered me an apology. So
Yeah.
Joe Tay didn't even answer this call. He hasn't directly addressed this with Joe Tay. I mean, I would say that's pretty reasonable that he doesn't want to talk with someone who called for his kidnapping and bounty to to be taken. And so this is all just like statements in social media that apparently this apology has happened, and not actually to the face of Joe Tay, who wants nothing to do with this person, quite obviously and justifiably.
Okay, let's get to I'll read this ad so that we can pay the bills around here, and then do we need to hit a Rebel News ad break, and then we'll get into the Tesla nonsense.
Yes.
We didn't have any here in Alberta. I went and checked with my own two eyes. We remain one of the best places in this entire country, but let's pay the bills. I want to tell you about getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Carries a great selection of all natural herbal teas that will aid your body with an effective and gentle cleanse. Get the Tea comes in different flavors that are all designed to cleanse your colon and help maintain optimal digestive health. GetTheTea.com also carries high quality supplements that help with stamina, blood sugar, blood pressure, and more. For the month of February, it's April, you'll get $10 off two of their most popular supplements: Alicillin Advanced to boost immunity, and Apple Cider Plus to help with weight management. Prioritize your health with the help of getthetea.com. Be your best self in 2025. Go to getthetea.com now. Enter discount code RUMBLE for an extra 10% off your order. That's getthetea.com, discount code RUMBLE for 10% off. That's getthetea.com. In case you missed it, discount code RUMBLE. Okay, Tamara, I'll see you back on the other side of this ad break.
Sounds good.
What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus' call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase.
Mark Carney, Trudeau's money man, globalist, China's pal. Weeks in, he jets to Beijing, scores a $250 million loan from their state bank. 11 MPs tied to Beijing. Carney's crew says nothing, selling us out. Foreign cash, secret deals. Carney's Canada.
Yeah, before we get into the Tesla stuff, I just also wanted to throw to some new merch that has dropped through one of our partners, Make Canada Great Again. So we've teamed up with the MCGA, the Make Canada Great Again hats, for exclusive MCGA merch. These are high quality products that are proudly made here in Canada. So there's no cheap imports, just real, true Canadian craftsmanship. They're perfect as a statement piece or a gift for a Canadian patriot in your life. And we're just showing the website there so you can shop the different hats and make your statements out in the wild. There are so many times where I see people out in the wild with various merch on, and I'm, it's such a great conversation starter when you see people out and either they're wearing Rebel stuff or some sort of other, adjacent slogans on their t-shirts, and it's always nice to run into people out in the wild that way. So I love to wear this stuff when I'm going to the grocery store, just a mundane, think nothing of it grocery day. And then all of a sudden, you meet a like mind in the wild.
There's a lady who gives out the samples at my Costco who recognized me through my Rebel merch because I was sort of schlepping. I was not at my best. And she's like, looked at my shirt and she's like, Shayla, runs across leaves her sample table, runs across the store to give me a big hug. So yeah, this is like a bat signal to the other rebels of the world that, we're with you, we're there. And you know what? These are a good counterbalance to Doug Ford's very clearly made in China. What is it? His Canada is not for sale hats.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Cringe.
And he just looks, I mean, anecdotally, he just looks terrible in a hat. And so it's not doing him any favors. Yeah. To be too much cherry cheesecake. Okay. So we had Tesla protests happening internationally, but of course that rippled into Canada. As we mentioned at the beginning of the stream, it was the Tesla takedown day. And so the protesters were calling for people to sell off their Tesla stocks and sell off their Tesla vehicles and do everything they can.
Don't take financial advice from a leftist on the stock markets either, by the way. Don't do that.
They're calling on the financial ruin of Elon Musk as the head of DOGE in the United States, the Department of Government Efficiency, because I guess who wouldn't want your government to be efficient and to cut your taxes and cut foreign spending for absolutely absurd and ridiculous millions and billions of dollars in funding going to programs that make no sense and have no tangible outcome or benefit to the United States taxpayer. Anyway, so I guess because of all of this, Elon Musk is somehow destroying democracy and he needed to be protested against. We've seen vandalism and other violence in the streets targeting Tesla and Elon Musk. And so we had producer Ephraim and David Menzies head out to Kitchener to cover one of their protests. And this is at the same time too, where Southern Ontario is being hit with a hail and freezing rain and ice storm over the weekend. There are still people without power just north of and around me. We luckily were mostly insulated from the fallout of it, but everywhere around where I live is still without power and dealing with wreckage from the ice. But anyway, we have a clip here to share of the Kitchener rally and where many of these signs are calling Elon Musk a Nazi.
We don't want a world run by people like Elon Musk. And it's for our future. It's for the future of our children and the future of our planet. And we're here to let people know that there's a change happening and we're not going to let this change happen.
So, ma'am, just so I understand.
You can move on.
Is it about his involvement in Doge? I'm just trying to understand your position and the cuts that are being made.
Why is he in the government? Why is he in the U.S. government? Why is he involved?
Who elected him?
Who elected him? What's his...
Well, I think he's in an advisory role, which I understand is perfectly legal.
But do you think he has the education for that?
But I look at some of the cuts. $32,000 for a transgender comic book.
40. Read that garbage to us. We don't want to hear it.
Why is that garbage, man?
I don't think Canadians need Elon Musk to tell them how to vote. I think Canadians can figure it out on their own.
Has Elon Musk been telling Canadians how to vote?
He has. Yes, he has.
Who are we supposed to vote for?
Oh, I think you know. I think he's a friend of your networks.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have any power on that. So, but I mean, I'm looking at some of the cuts.
I don't want to hear your garbage. That's
Okay.
all inaccurate garbage.
What about $40,000 to produce a transgender opera in Colombia?
Garbage. All of what you're saying is
How about
fake.
$70,000?
What's your
Do you
source?
have any
What's your
sources?
source?
Yeah,
for
that this is being widely reported in the
Where?
media.
What's the source?
Yeah, well, you can go to Dodge's
You
website.
tell me the source.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
But
Dodge
so
is full of garbage.
if these, okay, let me frame the question this way. Why? I'm on a public. I'm on a public piece of land, ma'am.
We're done with that.
Okay, then.
So the source is Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. I have it pulled up here. I shared the link if we could just pull it up because they're going through all their contract updates.
Yeah.
The latest work here says over the last 3 years, agencies terminated 121 wasteful contracts with a ceiling value of $351 million.
That's 3 days worth of work.
3
3
days.
days.
With a
Wow.
savings of a $156 million, including a $1.6 million DEI contract for strategies for implementing social emotional learning. And so you can
is that?
literally just scroll through and see all of the work that Doge has been doing to cut the waste and cut these ridiculous, absurd foreign pet projects, and I would say money laundering schemes. And I mean, this is the inability of the left to fact check. And she says, it's always like, think of the children. And it reminds me of that Simpsons episode
They don't
where,
have kids.
yeah, well, they
Those
probably
ladies
don't have kids. But
Those
it's
old bra
just,
burners don't have kids. Anyway.
and the future of our planet. But this goes back to, again, what we mentioned at the beginning of the stream.
Cars.
I thought Elon Musk was saving the planet with his green vehicles and electric vehicles. Now, all of a sudden, he is not saving the planet. Like, I mean, how do you keep track of the mental gymnastics needed to, it's just absolutely absurd. You can't keep track of it because it's insane.
Yeah, I have a friend who refers to women like this, and she says those are the kind of ladies who don't have children, they have cats and abortions. And I'm not taking anybody using kids as a cudgel when they're like that. But I found it funny when she's like, we don't need a foreign government telling us how to vote. I believe Donald Trump endorsed Mark Carney just a couple of days ago. I think that news escaped these old bra burners because it doesn't fit with their narrative and likely not reported on the CBC.
Right. They didn't hear it on their nighttime news, so it can't be true. And they can't even so much as figure out how to search up something on the internet to find it for themselves. So there's the caliber of intelligence you get from these kinds of protesters. But we have one other small clip to share from the Kitchener protest. And I'm not sure if that full report will be out today, but it looks like it'll be a doozy.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Honk if you hate Nazis. Who's the Nazi? Sir or ma'am, I can't. Ma'am, who's the Nazi? Well, that's not very ladylike. Yeah. Oh, is that a slur now or?
Ladylike.
Oh, what does that mean, ma'am?
Well, you tell me. Here,
Would you like to talk to this gentleman over here? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, sir. I'm being directed to talk to you. I see a lot of signs alluding to Nazis
They're
and
letting the man
swastikas.
talk for
What's
them.
going on?
Well, Elon Musk supports the AfD party in Germany, and he sends money and supports socialist or supports right-wing authoritarian politicians.
And you equate those who are right of center as being Nazi, sir?
No.
Do I have that right?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll see those full remarks in the full report. But as I mentioned, camerawoman Avery and I didn't head out to the one in Belleville because of the ice, but we instead went to the local Tesla charging station. And it's a pretty big one that they have in Coburg. And there's another little subsect of your more generic electric vehicle chargers there. And we stumbled upon one guy with obviously a Tesla, and he had like Elon with the line through it and some other signs on his vehicle that was like denouncing Elon Musk and Tesla. And so I thought this is going to make a great interview. So I went up and I said, "Oh, so you don't agree with Elon Musk? Do you want to tell us a little bit more?" And he goes, "No, my wife bought these stickers so that my car doesn't get vandalized when we're driving through the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area." So they were traveling, I don't remember
It's
exactly from where.
undercover.
Yeah, so they took this precautionary measure to put these stickers on his vehicle in hopes that his car wouldn't be targeted by, the tolerant left. They're all about inclusivity and tolerance until you drive a Tesla and you're risking having it vandalized and destroyed just because you bought a Tesla from Elon Musk, who's cutting bureaucratic waste and DEI initiatives in Guatemala.
And saving astronauts from certain death. Going back to David's video, couple of funny things in there. I'm reliably informed by these exact same people that honking is a hate crime. And yet they're encouraging people to honk. They invoked the Emergencies Act for the honking, ladies. And also, when David says to them, well, that's not very ladylike or whatever it was, and then they get offended because they're feminists and how dare you. But also, don't talk to us. Let this elderly man who can barely string together a sentence to do all the thinking and the talking for us. I'm not a feminist, but I'm pretty sure that's not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, and again, I couldn't get any reasonable answers as to how
No, they don't
Elon
know.
doing this work in the United States affects what Canada's democracy. So, stay tuned for those reports because they'll be funny. And I think we'll probably keep our ears to the ground on this one and continue to follow it as it unfolds. I'm sure there will be more protests planned, and it was horrible weather in this region of Ontario over the weekend. And so when the weather's a bit nicer, I am really looking forward to what the turnout will be like.
It's the dumbest of Canadian tag-alongs. Like this has nothing to do with us except for the reliable internet connection it provides so many of us rural people through Starlink. I don't know what any of the Elon Musk nonsense has to do with Canadians, but these are also women's marchers. I can tell by their stupid hats. And so that's when thousands of Canadian women were marching on the streets of Canadian cities because Donald Trump, the first time he got elected, was going to take away their right to vote or speak or whatever. And yet here they are doing all the miserable things they got to do before.
Here they are vandalizing a Tesla dealership in Ottawa just because.
Look at this. This is political violence, by the way. Like this is well, it's not violence. I mean, you can't commit violence against a building, but this is like economic intimidation for political reasons.
Yeah, and
Where's the
meanwhile,
Emergencies Act?
Well, I was just going to say, you have Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, who have faced the longest mischief trial in Canadian history for backing a grassroots Canadian movement against government edicts, mandates, and diktats. And we have people who are spray painting and vandalizing dealerships, and they can just get off scot-free.
Yeah, and I see they're from last generation. They say they're the last generation of humanity because of the evil oil industry over there, of course, protesting a Tesla dealership, electric cars. But I don't know about you, Tamara, but I have the next generation of Canadians living under my roof. I think you do too. So if these guys are saying that they are the last generation of whatever they are, I accept these terms. I'm fine. Perfect. Good. Whatever you
We just
are,
have to get
that
through.
stops with you. It's good.
We have to get through the next decade, and then we'll be okay on the
We're
other
good.
side here. But all of the things that you're wearing and using, and spray paint is quite literally derived from oil and gas. So maybe if you start using things that aren't derived from the very thing you are trying to do away with, then we would take you more seriously. But anyway.
We've got a video from Daisy Media. He was assaulted by a member of the weekly Palestinian Hate March in Ottawa. OPS officers ignored the assault and my request for assistance. A PLT, I think that's the public liaison officer, blamed me and hit my phone while trying to prevent me from filming him. This is just exactly Ottawa police that I remember and dislike from the Freedom Convoy. All the miserable white ladies in there.
I just was assaulted here. Are you going to do something about the assault? Who assaulted me? I was just assaulted. You saw 2798. He didn't do his job. You're going to worry about me, or you're going to worry about the people assaulting me? We're going to let those assaults go today? Dude, I just got assaulted. Did you see my phone? So I've been assaulted. None of these officers will help me. They won't help me. He witnessed it. Liaisons won't help me. They witnessed it. Will any of you officers help me? I was just assaulted by this mob. I did. They're ignoring me.
Mark, no. He didn't do his job. He's not detaining the guy.
Will any of you officers acknowledge me? I've been assaulted. This officer witnessed it, ignored it. All of these officers are completely ignoring the assault. Will any of you police help? I'm asking for assistance. I've been assaulted.
Yeah, that's pretty standard protocol if you work for the Ottawa Police Service. But if you try to probe a string of suspicious infant deaths following the rollout of a novel pharmaceutical product, well, we can't be having that. And then you will be under the thumb of a tribunal hearing proceeding against
Look at
you.
this.
But they can, yeah.
This is more violence, by the way, committed by any single convoy member during the entire nearly 3-week-long protest that took place back in the winter of 2022. And yet the police do nothing. Absolutely nothing.
They're escorting them. They
Yeah.
have a whole escort there at the front, clearing the way, letting them
Guess
march.
who's getting denounced by the Independent Press Gallery president today? Ottawa Police. That reminds me, I just put on my list of things to do for today because that's outrageous. It happened on camera. Like it happened on camera right then. Just go and grab the guy. Here's your evidence. Go and get him. Nope.
And
Too much
really
like work.
Nothing like this, completely unsolicited and unwarranted. Not that violence is ever, but I mean, he is quite literally just filming.
She's standing there
protests,
filming. It's Chris. Yeah.
and they're hitting him in the face. And this isn't the first time he was attacked. I think was that last summer. I'm trying to remember. And he had his face was all bruised and swollen, and his phone was stolen. So this isn't the first time that he's had a run-in with these types, and it just goes to show that the inclusivity touting left is very violent and hostile.
Let's move ahead to what is it? Israel now. Hamas supporters are targeting Canadian Minister of Immigration, Rachel Bendayan. Is she the Minister of Immigration? 2 weeks ago, she was the gun grabber, like the Deputy Minister of Public Safety. Anyways, they're protesting her because she's Jewish. I think that nobody should be protested simply because they are Jewish. But I should advise Rachel to dance with the ones that brought her, as Shania Twain once sang, because these are her people. These are this is the liberal base, Rachel. So figure it out.
Yeah, let's play this one.
Miss Brendan, Miss Brendan, what do you feel about Israel's slaughter in Gaza? What do you feel about all the kids that have been killed?
Please give
What do
some
you think
space.
about all the kids that
Please
have been
give some
killed in the
space.
past week?
Please give some space.
Minister Brendan, what do you think about all the kids that have been killed over the past week?
Hey,
You support that? You see that Canada's just sending much more weapons?
obstructing her way.
You see
You're
Canada's
obstructing
sending
her
much
way.
more weapons?
You're
Stop
obstructing
touching
the
me.
way.
Stop touching me.
Yeah, and look, they can shove their cameras in your face, but the
Right.
moment you try to film them while you're being violently attacked.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. If that were a convoy supporter doing that to her, it would be all over the news, right? They'd be freezing bank accounts again. But because this is one of those pro-Hamas protesters, we don't even know who's funding all these mass protests every single week across cities all across the country. FinTrack is an entire government agency dedicated to tracking down the funds that contribute to terrorism and human trafficking and financial crimes. They've never done anything to figure out how much Iranian money is being plunged into Canada to fund these protests. But if you bought a Tim's card for a trucker, you were cut off from your bank account for weeks. It's
Yeah, and as
outrageous.
these protests proliferate in our streets, well, where do the police priorities lie? Well, of course, today they lie in the International Transgender Day of Visibility. It's honoring, this is from the Toronto Police Service, honoring the strength, resilience, and contributions of transgender individuals while raising awareness of the ongoing fight for gender equality.
I'm gonna try to keep this YouTube safe.
Yes.
But do you think transgender people have a difficult time being visible?
Not in today's world. That's
Not
for
in
sure.
today's world.
Not in
You
today's
get your own
world.
sidewalk. Get your own sidewalk. So
Flags, sidewalks, their own rights.
yeah, the police are posting your flag as the day. Like I don't think that visibility is a problem for the transgender community. I just don't. Correct
And
me
we
if I'm wrong.
have the Liberal candidate for Toronto Centre, Evan Solomon, the one that we were laughing at last week, who posed in front of his campaign office with
Urine
poo and
soaked
pee
office wall.
all over the street and the wall. He's taken to X to post a whole video about it, or 25-second clip.
Here comes the full body cringe from Sheila. Let's go.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Melissa on the Trans Day of Visibility, a really important day here in our country.
Gosh.
What does it mean for you?
Trans Day of Visibility is very important for the trans community in that we're out in the community, we're doing our thing, we're out being seen and part of the community, which we always are every day of the week.
It's a fight that Liberals have been involved with for a long time, and under Team Carney, we will continue to fight. Hey everyone.
I wasn't expecting the voice.
That was jarring.
On that one.
But again, the person that he's walking with says, we're out in the community, we're doing our thing, we're living our lives. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay. So you're just doing your thing, you're living your life. Okay, right on. So you don't need this extra day of visibility. You're already out in the community doing your thing. Okay,
Just
thank
out
you
here.
for, yeah. Okay.
Out here being seen.
Yeah.
It just shows that they like this constant need to stroke the ego.
Yeah. To be special.
Like
right?
we have to be
special.
seen. You have to acknowledge us.
Would you
have
look
to
at me already?
Yeah.
We're just out
here in the street being seen.
I just don't understand the narcissism of this. Like I like to just shuffle through my life as like everybody's 40-something mousy looking mom. Like I prefer to live my life that way. But imagine the narcissism of making sure that everybody looks at you all the time, every single day. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's very mental illness adjacent behavior. All right, I think we should probably just touch on, speaking of mental illness behavior.
Oh my gosh.
That's one
Lise has
tweet.
the best line about this, but I'll save it for after.
Yeah, so we have Janice. What's her last? I can't even remember her last name again. Thank you.
Janice Irwin, the great Edmontonian embarrassment.
Yeah, the
NDP,
NDP.
yeah, she's an NDP MLA in Edmonton. And so when you guys hear me say uncomfortable things about how much I dislike Edmonton, this is why. These are the voting habits of Edmonton. And Ralph Klein said it like 30 years ago, and it remains true. Edmonton, beautiful city, too many mosquitoes and socialists. Still true. It's a government town. They elect people like Janice Irwin. NDP lie detector has this tweet. Because Daniel Smith was in Florida speaking directly to Trump's base about the evils of tariffs, and the NDP were, I guess, dancing against tariffs. This is Janice Irwin. God help us.
That's going to help us. This is obviously.
At least she has shoes on, because oh God. Again, this goes back to the narcissism of just making sure that everybody's looking at you all the time, and they must never avert their gaze from you. There was that video the other day, and I think it was on Libs of TikTok, of Janice Irwin bringing us international shame, doing a similar dance in the street. And there's like a million cameras. Look at how many cameras. Now, then she takes her shoes off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to get the alphabet soup of hepatitis. Those are Amarjeet Sohi's streets. Do not. What are you doing? But Lise has the best line for Janice Irwin. If you watch Janice Irwin with the sound off, you could just be mistaking her for any old run-of-the-mill meth head tweaker in Amarjeet Sohi's Edmonton. Look, sound off? Yeah. Take me to your supervised injection.
I was just going to say, looks fresh out of a safe consumption site.
Yeah, this is, anyways, Ralph Klein, always right. Too many socialists and mosquitoes, and they want you to look at them at all times, center of attention, always.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our headliners for today on this manic Monday. We have a 1775 coffee script, so I will just read that one while we wait for maybe any lingering super chats or other comments to come in. So this comes, as I mentioned, from 1775 Coffee. Weak coffee is for the weak, and at Rumble, weak has never been a part of the mission. No fillers, no fraud, and no settling for mediocrity, just like 1775 Coffee. It's single origin, small farm, hand-picked, specialty grade coffee that stands for quality, free speech, and calling out BS when it matters. Forget stale, mass-produced beans roasted just enough to hide the flaws. Dark roast hits like a Trump tariff. Medium roast keeps it bold without the bitterness. And Vitality Mushroom Blend is real energy and lasting focus, no synthetic garbage. For K-Cup pods, whole bean, or fresh ground coffee, go to 1775coffee.com. Use code STUDIO for 15% off and start your morning with coffee that stands for something. And every dollar spent enters you to win a Cybertruck and $30,000 in cash. So there you have it. 1775 Coffee, support free speech and strong coffee. All right. Doesn't look like we have any more super chats to get to.
Okay, well then we'll wrap the show up. I think I'm back in the seat tomorrow. I'm here with Lise, who I hope will bring her jokes about the Liberal MPs and MLAs here in Alberta. Tamara, thanks for co-hosting the show with me today, and thanks for heading out to cover the Tesla protest madness at the local charging station. Thanks to everybody who works behind the scenes at Rebel News to make sure the show is there when you want to click on it. Thanks to everybody who pitched in a little bit to keep the lights on here at Rebel News. We couldn't do it without you. Without you, there's no Rebel News. And as my friend David Menzies always says, stay safe and stay sane.
This is who Rod Loyola praised. Fidel Castro, a brutal communist dictator. Now, Loyola's jumping ship from the radical NDP to run federally for Mark Carney's Liberals. Mark Carney, embracing hard-left radicals who celebrate anti-capitalist tyranny.
Which leads the critical mass to surpass the imbalance of the capitalists. to the oppressed working class.
If this is Carney's team, imagine his Canada.